that it's a great experience, and I was hoping to encourage others to become part of helping youth. And so, go ahead, but if you would go ahead and pray. Amen. Thank you. My husband and I, for several years, pastored youth group, and we had as many as 35 kids that we took places that met at our home. And at the very beginning of our youth group, one of the things my husband liked to do was to go to Elk Mountain, which is in Lawton. And he had gone several times, and I had never been there. And so I promised him that I would go. And I didn't know what kind of commitment I was making when I said I would go. Because when I got to the base of the mountain, I literally was stunned. I've been to Diamond Head in Hawaii. I've been several places, but I never had to actually go to the top of a mountain like that. I mean, actually walk and stumble and all of those things, and get rocks in your shoes and all the things. And besides, it was hot. And so one of the things I decided that I was going to do is, if it got too bad, I was going to back out. I decided that nobody cared, my husband would love me anyway, I'm going to back out. But I realized that that probably wasn't the best thing for me. So I called that my obstacle number one. It's something new and nobody will care, and then I'll give up and it won't be a big deal. Well, the first 100 yards was rocky and narrow, and it was hard to walk on. And honestly, I have trouble walking on a flat surface. So going up a mountain was not exactly good for me, but I decided it was something that I needed to do. I mean, besides, we have 9 kids and my husband, and of course he's not capable of taking care of them. So at least that was, that's, I gotta go, I gotta do this. So Romans 10:12 says, "Therefore let him who thinks he stands take heed that he does not fall. No temptation has overtaken you, but such as is common to man, and God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will provide the way of escape also, so that you will be able to endure it." So the temptation was definitely there to quit, but I knew that God would not give me anything that was insurmountable. In our daily walk with the Lord, aren't there rocks in our paths and obstacles that we run into? But doesn't He deliver us, and isn't He beside us all the way? Inch by inch, it's a cinch. Denise, don't give up before you've even started. Okay, then obstacle number 2. Taking the first step is moving towards success. So I slowly proceeded up the mountain. I can do it. What if I was bringing up the rear of the group? Who cares about that? Someone had to be on the end. The path was narrow, and there was barely room enough for the group to go up in a single file. There was room on the path for just me in the very place that I was. I had to depend on God to supply my needs, and so He did. My husband had asked me to let the boys help me if the steps were too hard, and there were several times that they came and helped me up steps that were taller than my knees. But again, I thought, isn't that not like God too? Whenever we're trying to do our best to go up a narrow path, doesn't He send just the right person in our path to make sure that we can get up the steps. Okay, obstacle number 3, the path is too hard. Matthew 7:13 and 14 says, enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life, and there are few that find it. I was hot and huffing and puffing and tired, and as my grandmother would say, I was glowing. I hollered with all the breath left in me, can't we stop and rest? When my husband said we were almost at a stopping place, I didn't think I could even take another step. I kept thinking to myself, with God all things are possible, with God all things are possible. We got to the stopping place, my hat came off, the water bottle went to my handkerchief, and I wiped it all over my face. We stopped a couple of other times, and each time I was relieved by the coolness of the water and the sweet breeze against my glowing face. The top was in sight. The goal was attainable. If you give up in life when the going gets hot or hard, then you don't learn the things that God has put in your life to mold you into what He wants you to be. Psalm 66:10 says, for you have tried us, O God. You have refined us as silver is refined. I did it. I made it to the top. Wait, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It wasn't in my strength that I made it to the top, but it was in His. Hebrews 12:1 says, therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which is so easily entangling us, and let us run with endurance at the race that is set before us. So there I was at the end of, at the top, almost at the top. It was attainable. It was almost attainable. Oh, great. Now I got to the top. Oh my goodness, the feel of the breeze and the exhilaration of reaching and attaining the goal. I wonder if the best part of being on the mountaintop was the mountain itself, or the challenges and dependence on God that made it the most wonderful to be there. I think a person feels close to God when they're on the top of the mountain. You know, when you think that you've attained the goal, many times there's something else just around the corner which makes you just keep going. The kids wanted to go on and find the cave they had found the year before. So we weren't going to go down anytime soon. I was ready. I was ready to go down back to the car. No, the kids were ready to go exploring. They were on the top of the mountain. They wanted to explore. They were hot and sweaty just like me, and they wanted a place to keep going. So they were looking for a place to rest. Well, little did I know that much more endurance and my measure of faith would be required. As we walked toward the general direction of this cave they were searching for, we walked on top of these huge rocks. As we got closer to where they thought the cave was, we descended down the other side of the mountain. Obstacle number 5. Where is my faith and who is my trust in? In front of us were huge boulders to climb. Some of the boulders were as much as 70 degrees incline, which means like this. At least it felt like that to me. You put your tennis shoes together and you sidestep until you get to the top. For the kids, it wasn't too much effort, but for me, it was an obstacle. And then we were looking for, we continued to look for our destination. During our short rest, we found a place to sit down, and we had a devotional, and my husband emphasized that everyone is given a measure of faith, and we should all use our faith in different ways. So they started talking about faith, and then pretty soon the topic was water, and then everybody said, I'm thirsty, I don't have any water, and only one person had water left. So they divided it up a little bit at a time, and my anxiety level went down just a tad. So we proceeded on, and in our direct path, was two more big boulders, and there was a giant gap between the boulders that we had to cross because there was no other way to get where we were going. Now, that's a problem for me because I'm short and I don't stretch very far. And so all of the kids, they're just jumping across. It wasn't a deep place, but it was, it was pretty, it's taller than me. And I'm thinking, I don't know how I can do this. And so I kept thinking, every kid's jumping, they're being successful, here I am, I'm not, I just don't know what I'm going to do. And so finally I decided that these two unlikely candidates, these two boys across on the big rock, I was going to have to put my faith in. I was going to have to say to them, I put my faith in you. And when I looked at them, my eyes said no, and my head said, okay, I guess this is my only choice. Otherwise, I have to wander around up here all for years, it seems like. So I told my husband that I would jump across if they would promise to catch me. Now you've seen the movie Indiana Jones, and that gentleman just steps out, and there is that stone. Well, I jumped, and those two boys caught my hand, and I thought, wow, that is something else, that the Lord used these two young men who I wouldn't hardly put too much confidence in, but yet they were the best. They caught me, and it taught me a lesson. It taught me that the Lord uses unlikely people to get our attention. And so we all got across that, and here we are. We finally are at the top, and we're about to go descend down the mountain. And what happens is that at the very crest of the mountain, on the way down, my ankle turns, the rock turns, I turn, and I fall down on the path. And all the way down, all of the kids that are in front of me, I'm last. All of the kids that are in front of me said, Denise fell, Denise fell, Denise fell. So now everybody on the mountain knows who Denise is and what she's doing. But then what happens is I get help. The Lord sends help. And I make it down the mountain, and then what a great piece of success that you think you have. You're feeling exhilarated, and God, think of all the things God has done for you while you've gone up the mountain. And it's just a remarkable feeling, and everybody gets in the van, and we feed them, and they're hot and sweaty and tired. They're hot and sweaty and tired. And so we start home, and the van started to have mechanical problems. We were able to get the van from Lawton, Oklahoma, through the stoplights in Norman on Highway 9, because there's lots of them, and all the way to Seminole. We got within a mile of our destination when the van bit the dust. And so Bob and I are discussing back and forth, what are we going to do? Are we going to, leave the van and walk to our destination? Are we going to call someone and have them come? The kids pile out of the van. They piled out of the van, and they say, we're going to push it to where we're going. And one of them said, I'm going to use my measure of faith. And all of the other, and then he said, I think we all should use our measure of faith. And they started pushing that van. Now let me tell you, that was a heroic effort. Those kids pushed and pushed and pushed until they got probably within a quarter of a mile of where we were going. And finally, they were pushed out, but they just kept saying, use your measure of faith. down the road came this other van. And in this other van was a gentleman who stopped and said, "Are you guys having trouble?" And we said, "Yes." And he said, "Well," he said, I have a tow rope in my van. Can I tow you somewhere?" And we went, "Oh my goodness. There's the measure of faith the kids were using. There's the measure of faith that God used to bring our van back to where it belonged." And it was a measure of faith that none of us expected. It was simply an amazing thing. So I have always thought of that journey as a road of a measure of faith, because it just seems like those things happen all for a reason. If you talk to any of the kids that we were pastoring then, every one of them, I bet you, can tell you that story, because it was such an ingrained thing that happened. It is amazing to me what God decides to use whenever He is doing miraculous things, something that we never, ever expect. We would never expect that someone would come along who would already have a chain who could pull us. We would never expect that two young men would be able to catch us across the rock and be able to help us down. None of those things we expected, but the Lord provided. And one of the reasons I shared this story is because I think it's such a wonderful thing to work with youth. I think they teach us things all the time, and I am so thankful to be part of that. I'm so thankful that those individuals who work with the youth already are doing that, and I just wanted to encourage anyone else who has that interest, who really wants to be blessed, to also try that. Sometimes it's just patting one of them on the back and telling them they're doing a good job. Or at Christmas, finding those things that they specifically want. Sometimes it just means to just walk up to them and tell them how much you appreciate them being here. It just means personal attention. It means loving on them, because sometimes they don't have anybody else to love on them. And I just wanted to thank you for your attention, and this can go back to someone else now.